Big event on in New York. CEOs from 300 plus organizations nationwide. They attended closed-door session, members of CEO Action. It's the largest ever CEO-driven coalition that come together on November the 14th to advance diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And my special guest is Wright Lassiter III, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Henry Ford Health System. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm great, Mark. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Well, it's the third annual combined gathering of CEOs and CHROs and CDOs. There's more O's you can poke a stick at with CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. CEO Action, it's going to host more and has hosted 300 signatory organizations. That's a big do. So to understand the significance of this, right, the significance of this gathering, what a coalition impact with a role to advance diversity and inclusion in the business community. Is that about right?
That's correct. You know, we come together because we all believe very strongly that as CEOs of large corporations, we have an obligation to our team members, an obligation to our boards, an obligation to the communities we serve, an obligation to shareholders if you're a publicly traded organization to ensure that your workplace is safe and open for conversations around diversity and inclusion, to focus on driving goals and strategies that would create environments within our companies where we reflect the customers and communities that we serve, and ensure that we have a place where our boards understand the priorities around this issue and support the CEO and senior management in advancing the strategies and objectives we've created.
Well, it sounds like the agenda is quite large. You'd get a lot done. But I gather these sessions are a series of intimate and candid closed-door, like CEO to CEO, action-based discussions, probably framed by acclaimed diversity and inclusion experts there and other provocative speakers, I guess.
Absolutely. We pair it with what I would call TED Talk kind of conversations with experts, sharing something of interest that helps propel us with additional strategies around this effort. We pair with peer-to-peer sharing with folks, CEOs sharing what's working in their companies and what challenges they're facing. And then we have small group sessions where we get to work in more intimate settings of 5 or 6 of us at a table to talk more deeply about what we're doing in our individual companies.
Well, right, it sounds like a very rare opportunity for the nation's business leaders to collaborate, share ideas, and really make progress on their shared mission to drive change and promote equity. I guess, the question that would come to my mind is, do they sort of keep a lot to themselves, or do they really open right up? I mean, is there a sense of competition in the rooms?
Mark, that's a great question. And one of the comments that was made in the closing session is that when you think about the major industries in the United States, financial services and banking, insurance, consumer goods, retail, healthcare, et cetera, that when we come together to talk about issues of diversity and inclusion, it's not a competitive issue whatsoever. And so we all collectively, as the term would go, we open our komodos and we share pretty deeply what's going on. And I would just say, in addition to the CEOs sharing, many organizations also bring their chief human resource officers and their chief people officers and their chief diversity officers to settings where they're all sharing at a more granular level than the CEO level, the strategies that they're pursuing. And then this morning at the end of our session, we got an opportunity to bring the entire group together so that the CEOs were in the room with the heads of HR and chief diversity officers to talk in a more granular manner around what we can do better. So no, we do not see it as a competitive environment. If you think about consulting, financial services, we had CEOs of many, if not all of those major companies sitting in the room today having conversations about what they're doing to advance diversity and inclusion in their company, and doing that knowing that there might be a competitor sitting at the next table who would hear that, and so we do not see it as a competitive issue whatsoever.
No. I guess the only thing I'd get ticked off about is if they start recruiting my execs. The CEO Action Coalition, this thing is the largest CEO-driven business commitment to try and advance diversity and inclusion within the workplace. And it represents more than 800 CEOs and presidents of America's leading businesses, academic institutions as well, and nonprofits. Now, signatory organizations collectively represent, I think it's about 14 million employees. So, there's a lot at stake with this, isn't there?
There's absolutely a lot at stake. And I think most of us would say, if not all of us would say, that as CEOs, part of our role is to be a leader and to be a role model for our team members as well as for, the broader society at large. And so when we come together collectively with that much of sort of U.S. humanity under our aegis as employees of our organization, we really feel strongly that this collaboration, this coalition, is not just about making our organizations better, but it's about leaders of companies taking a strong stance to do what's right, not just within the walls of our company, but within the communities that we live and work and serve.
So tell me, what does each signatory pledge to do?
Well, we pledge first and foremost to ensure that our workplaces are safe environments for our team members and our leaders to have what at times may be crucial or uncomfortable conversations around advancing diversity and inclusion and equity in our workplaces. We commit on a regular basis to share best practices with our colleagues. We each commit to ensuring that our organization has a strategic plan around diversity and inclusion, and that is shared with our board, so that it's not just a management priority, but it's a priority of the governance of our organization. And we commit to having what we call day of understandings within our organization, where we gin up opportunities to have conversations around not just what's working, but what do we need to do better. And so each of us have made those commitments, and we're doing that by our own direct action as well as through the delegated action of our chief diversity officers and our chief human resource officers.
I'm speaking with Wright Lassiter III, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Henry Ford Health System, about the big CEO coalition, which happened in New York this morning. And, of course, this will stay as a podcast to be heard, later on at much more days. I guess if anybody would like to find out more for next year, who may not have heard of or missed out, can they always apply to attend? Is there somewhere they can go to read all about this online?
Well, they can go to ceoaction.com, and there is a really comprehensive website that one shares what the initiative is all about, shares with an interested party what the commitments are that CEOs are making, as well as what companies around the United States have signed on the pledge, which CEOs of companies have signed on around the pledge. And so folks can search for that information, and I'm sure it will be out soon, the dates for our next CEO action in 2020, as well as the things we're committing to throughout the calendar year.
So let me ask you this, Wright, if I may. What was your aha moment that motivated you to join the coalition?
So for me, Mark, I would tell you it was fairly straightforward. This action for me wasn't a pivot point in our organization. We've had a long-standing commitment to diversity and inclusion. So for me, this was an opportunity, one, for me to take an even broader leadership role with being an example for our team members around what's important to our organization, as well as having an opportunity to regularly engage with what now is 800 CEOs of leading companies around this country to get better. And so for me, it wasn't a specific aha moment. It was, in my mind, it was one more milestone in a journey for Henry Ford Health System to be one of the nation's leaders around diversity, inclusion, and equity.
That's good. So let me ask you this. What do you see as the CEO's role in promoting diversity and inclusion within their respective organizations and in the business community overall?
Well, internally, I would start with the one comment, which is it's the CEO's role to lead from the top. And to lead from the front. This is an opportunity for every member of your senior executive team, your cabinet, for your board, and for your team members to know that you believe that diversity and inclusion is not just a nice thing to do, but it's a business imperative. It is absolutely essential expectation of leaders. And so what I say to our organization is that this is something that I fully expect for every leader to embrace. And so it's important for the CEO not only to sort of set that tone from the top and to lead from the front, but it's also important for the CEO to demonstrate some sense of vulnerability here and not to presume that we have all of the answers. And so it's an opportunity for me to engage with employees. So we, for instance, have 10 employee resource groups that represent all manners of subpopulations of affinity groups within our organization. And so I see the other role of the CEO is great visibility to your employee resource groups to be able to meet with them, understand their issues, at times to understand what challenges they're facing that you might not be aware of, and then to make sure that those things get on the radar screens of the organization to address and to move forward.
So it sounds like
And then the last thing I would say. I'm sorry, Mark. I said the last thing I would just say is, and then the last role that I would call out to you is with the board. What's critically important here is that if the CEO needs to model with his or her board the importance from a governance perspective that the board make this a priority as well. And so it's just really important for the CEO to sort of be that conduit between the organization and the board and ensuring that this is a priority at the board agenda, not just within the management ranks.
Yeah, right. No, very important fact. So collaboration is important in advancing diversity and inclusion. And really, I think it just helps to really run a well-oiled machine in business today. You've got to be as a team. So what do you think is the first step that leaders can take in addressing D&I issues in the workplace?
I think the first step that a leader should take is asking for information and data that helps you understand what challenges might your organizations face. I think that's I'm a big believer in begin with data, so understand what issues might exist, and so you start by asking for data. And the next thing that I would do as the leader is begin to facilitate conversations around what's the end game, what's the goal that we're trying to accomplish. That goal may be greater board diversity. That goal may be greater management, leadership diversity. That goal may be how do we foster an environment that creates the comfort for greater conversations around diversity and inclusion, and so what's necessary there. Or it may be engaging in town hall chats with staff around your company just to hear from them what are they facing, so that as you begin to put a vision together, to put a plan together, you understand the data. And you understand input from those who are doing the work of your company. Yeah. And so I sort of start there. If I were advising a new CEO of what to do to get started in this endeavor.
Yeah, I mean it is changing in the workplace. I think gone are the days when the guy sat on the ivory throne or in the ivory tower, and it's down there today. Roll the sleeves up, get to know your people, and get to know what the devil they're doing. Okay, so what actions would your organization take to better promote inclusivity in 2020?
Well, in 2020, I'd say a few things that we will be doing. First and foremost, we will be advancing greater unconscious bias training for all of our leaders, both administrative leaders and clinical leaders in our organization. Thus far, we have about 10% of our entire workforce that's gone through that training, and so we'll advance that significantly further next year. Secondly, we are going to have not just a day of understanding next year, but we're going to designate February 2020 as our month of understanding and have roadshows throughout all of our organization where we're having conversations with leaders and team members regarding how do we do better with advancing diversity and inclusion and equity. And then I said the last thing that's maybe new for us is launching a new diversity and inclusion equity strategic plan, which our board will spend time understanding and endorsing in 2020. So those are three things that'll be new for us that we'll be doing in 2020.
Well, sounds good. I wish you well with it all. And it's been beaut speaking with you, Wright Lassiter III, President and Chief Executive Officer of Henry Ford Health System. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
You're most welcome. Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Here on the Mark Bishop Show, and you can hear this, of course, a lot more right throughout weeks and months ahead on the Business Radio X network.